This is my workthrough of 70-740. I've got the book right beside me, and I will be working through all of the exercises. So this is section 1, which is install, upgrade and migrate servers and workloads. Right, the first bit tells us that we need to determine the Windows Server 2016 installation requirements. So I've got this nice little graph which I've taken from the book. So we can see we need 1.4 gigahertz 64-bit processor and 512 megabytes RAM for server core. This will actually fail to install with 512 megabytes of RAM. What you need to actually do is you need to install it with 800 megabytes of RAM, and then you can drop it down to 512. You need 2 gigabytes for the desktop experience, 32 gigabytes of disk space for a core install. If you have any roles, features or anything like that installed, it will go up, but that's just the bare minimum. You need gigabit networking as well. Now this one I'm not really sure about. It might be the minimum supported, but I've actually run it on a laptop that only had wireless on it, so I guess it doesn't really need it, but that's what the book says. 1024 by 768 resolution, keyboard and mouse, or some other human interface device, and then internet access. And over here on the right we've got the maximums. We can see that it's massive amount of processing power that it supports. So 512 logical processors for physical and 240 processors, logical processors per VM. Now this logical processors, for anyone that doesn't know, Intel works kind of funny, where this would actually be 256 processors, because Intel processors have hyper-threading. So for each processor core they have 2 threads, so they end up double the amount of logical processors. 24 terabytes of physical RAM, or 12 terabytes in a virtual machine. So that's the physical, that's the virtual. VHDX is up to 64 terabytes and up to 1024 VMs per Hyper-V host. There's also several different versions of it, of Server 2016. There is standard, so this is the fully featured OS, allows up to 3 OS environments for the license. That's 1 physical, so it will allow you to run 1 physical machine as a host, and then 2 virtual machines as guest OSs. Something that needs to be mentioned, because they've changed the way they've licensed it, you now need to license for every core that you're using, and the assumption is that the minimum server would have 2 processors, and each processor would have 8 cores. So you need, no, sorry, 2 processors and 4 cores each processor, I believe. So yeah, so you need to license all of that. The same applies for data center. Main difference between data center and standard is that data center has additional features such as shielded VM, storage spaces direct, storage replica, and a new software defined networking stack. And it allows unlimited VMs on a licensed Hyper-V host. Essentials, a cut down version for small organizations, 25 users, 50 devices, and 1 operating system environment. Multi-point premium, that's an educational version for lab use. Storage server is an OEM version for building storage devices, and Hyper-V is their free hypervisor. Okay, so our first bit is going to be installing Windows Server 2016 features and roles. So let's start off. Right, so here we have, this is my personal server, but here we have our domain controller that we will be using, and we have also a Windows Server 2012 R2 box that we'll use for the upgrade. So let's start new virtual machine. Next, and we will call this GUI 2016, and I'm just going to put this into my DVMs. We'll make a generation 2 machine. Now the difference between the 2 types of machine, generation 1 and generation 2, is that generation 1, it supports older operating systems, so operating systems before Server 2012, whilst generation 2 supports anything after 2012. There's a few other things. Generation 1 has it's kind of got emulated things, whilst generation 2 has synthetic devices. It should make everything run more efficiently because you don't have to deal with special drivers to try and deal with the emulated devices. You can read into that a bit more. I don't think that's particularly on the test, but anyway. Alright, so here's another difference. So over here on the generation 1 device, the recommendation is to use a fixed amount of memory, whilst on the generation 2 device the advice is to use dynamic memory. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the startup memory as 2048, and we're going to use dynamic memory. Next, We are going to connect to our NAT switch, and we are going to assign 50 gigabytes. Now, this is a dynamically expanding drive, so even though we'll assign that, it's going to start very small. So if we have a look here, DVMs, if we just go to next and install an operating system from a bootable image, let's do that. Browse, and there we go, Windows Server 2016. Let's hit open, hit next, hit finish, and it will create our machine for us. We've got one little job that we need to do though, otherwise it will take forever for it to install. We need to increase the number of processors, so I am going to make that into 12 processors. We don't actually need that, but it will load a lot quicker the more processors we throw in. So let's connect, and let's hit start. Okay, I am going to change the language to English. Hit next, hit install, and okay, I do not have a product key, and we are going to install data center with a desktop experience to start off with. So let's hit next, and let's accept, and hit next. And right, if there was already a operating system on this, we would be able to use the upgrade. So let's say we had version 2012 R2, we'd be able to use the upgrade, but we don't. This is a blank operating system, nothing there. So if the drive didn't appear here, we could click load driver, and we'd be able to find a driver that works with our particular hardware and load it up, and then we'd be able to start installing. But right now we have the correct drivers loaded, so we want to hit new. Now I'm going to put this down to 45. Let's hit apply. Now, as you can see here, we've got 6 gigs of unallocated space. Now, if we wanted to, we could extend this. So let's select that, and we can say we want to take up all of this space, and it says take up that space. So we hit apply, okay, and there we have it. It's all wrapped up into there. So now we just need to hit, if we wanted to, we could delete this partition. If there was already something on here. So let's say again we wanted to just use the existing partitions, we could just click format and then hit next, and it should start installing. Now this will take a few minutes to do, and while that's happening we can look a little bit further down. Let's hit okay, so install and configure Windows Server Core. So let's get a start on that. Hit new, virtual machine, hit next, and we'll call this one Core 2016, and we want this again to be d:\vms, and because we've done that way it will create a subfolder again. Let's hit next, we'll select generation 2 again, hit next, and again we'll use dynamic memory, hit next, did I name it correctly? I can't remember now. Yes, I did. Okay, and we want to connect to our NAT switch again. Hit next, and let's make this one 50 gigabytes as well. Hit next, and again we'll install the operating system from here. Okay, hit next and finish. Okay, so again, much the same, hit next, install now, okay, and this one was going to be core, so we select this option here, hit next, new drive again, apply. Hit next. This one should take a lot less time to install. Okay, so I am now going to install my super secret password. There we go, super secret and secure. Right, so let's send a control delete over to there. And here we go. Okay, so just wait for this to start up. And we're going to configure this server using first of all these tools here. So we want to rename this server. So name wise, so we click on that, change, and we will call this one GUI-2016, and let's let's hit OK. Okay, so GUI 2016 has rebooted, so it's been renamed. Okay, so let's see, local server, what can we do here? So we're going to disable the firewall, we'll do that in a minute. So remote management is enabled. We want to enable remote desktop. Okay, we want to assign a fixed IP address. So let's click here, give it a moment. Right, I think I'm actually done for the night. So I'm going to wish you all a good night, and I will continue this hopefully tomorrow.